Lauren, you have a hell of a resume, I got to tell you. Uh, you you are a certified care and education specialist. You also you work with cardiac wellness.
I did for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, pediatrics dietitian.
Mhm.
Uh, what's the Skinny in the City?
Oh,
That's a
that
website
was
that you want.
that was years ago. Yep, that was a
I
long
need you
time
just a
ago. But
little closer to that
recipes,
mic.
recipes, and
Keep coming.
wellness trends with
There
a
you go.
sort of a cute name. That was a long time ago.
Okay.
Yes.
How long ago? Help them with the mic there. Could
Oh,
you?
over 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. That's cool.
But I got my start sort of writing for a little website at that time. So
Right. So you did do some writing in regards to dietitian. Diet.
I've done, yeah, so that was more fun type of writing for the lay public. And then I've also, been involved with research and more academic
Let me
publications.
ask you a question. What got you into? What made you want to be a dietitian? Because that's not something that I would think that someone necessarily just set out. Okay, I want to be this and this. So was it something that someone that you knew had a situation that made you want to correct?
It's interesting because when I was in school, I graduated
Mhm.
college in 2003. And at the time, it was a growing field, but now people are literally in high school wanting to go into nutrition and health because the benefits of nutrition and lifestyle to really manage and prevent a lot of chronic disease is much more recognized.
Mhm.
And I recognized that even as a teenager, I'd had some of my own health issues. And I knew I wanted to go into the health slash medical field. And so I didn't decide immediately, but I went to school at UConn and I learned very quickly they had a really good nutrition and dietetics program.
Mhm.
And there's so many different things, such a variety of careers you can have with that background. And so I don't regret it. I'm excited I got into it. I've done many different things, but I've always had a particular interest in prevention because I know that lifestyle and more the research is coming out that lifestyle nutrition, and that includes nutrition's a huge component, but also mental health, sleep, um, fitness, exercise is so important for health, longevity, and mental health.
What's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
So, well, dietitians are nutritionists, but
Okay.
unfortunately, so the term just nutritionist by itself is not regulated. So you can have anybody who maybe did an online course calling themselves a nutritionist versus a registered dietitian who goes through an entire certification program. We do a residency in a hospital, so we're trained to manage, not just general nutrition, but nutrition for all different medical disease states, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. So it's a more medical training background. Yeah.
Diabetes. Oh, the big one. The silent
Yeah.
killer.
Yeah.
Uh, what diet would you recommend for someone with diabetes? Would you recommend a different diet for a teen uh, or youth, if we may, versus an adult?
It's not a one size fits all, certainly, but and that's the other thing. It overall, honestly, teens and adults should be um, adopting very similar diet. So families can make changes together on this.
Mhm.
What I tend to recommend is a predominantly plant centered diet, meaning more plant based foods, high fiber foods, high in fruits, vegetables, unrefined whole grains, nuts, seeds, and low in refined sugars, sugar sweetened beverages, and low in processed foods, and even animal protein. So, excessive meat intake, we always think of diabetes, that sugar causes diabetes, which is not exactly the case. And so,
Hey, whoa,
actually,
whoa. Hey,
yeah.
that's something new to me. Please
It
break it down.
really?
Yeah, I always thought. By the way, I have type 2 diabetes, and it is. I'm always watching my sugar intake. What else? What other areas do you grab that you can spike your numbers
So that's
or trigger
actually
diabetes? Go
that's a
ahead.
really interesting question. So it's a little bit more complicated than I would get into on this show, but um, So definitely avoiding processed sugars like, sodas, juices, sugary beverages is
Mm-hmm.
really important, and that definitely can exacerbate diabetes. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not promoting those foods, but
Mm-hmm.
so many people who have diabetes or are told that they're at risk for it are cutting out like healthy sources of natural sugar like fruit. Like they won't touch any fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's funny because actually consuming whole fruit in its natural form, which yes has some natural sugar, but it also has fiber, it also has antioxidants, which are so important, is actually linked to lower rates of diabetes versus say processed meat,
Mm-hmm.
which is high in saturated fat and just animal fat in general, which can actually make insulin resistance worse.
Meats, you're saying, have a higher sugar content?
No, they don't have a high sugar content, but the
Mhm.
actual fat content will make you can make you actually more resistant to
Oh, it's the
insulin.
fat content. My bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Yep.
hear that. Okay. So
Exactly.
the fat in it is what carries. W- well, let's break it down a little then, because my understanding of diabetes was that it was triggered based on stuff like the sugars, like you said.
Mhm.
But when you look now, based on what I'm understanding, and clarify it for me, please break it down like I'm in the fourth grade. I don't care. Okay. But when you look at, well, what I'm understanding now from you is that diabetes can be a problem from fatty foods.
Mhm.
Is that what you? Is that what I'm understanding
Yeah,
as
so
well?
it's a combination of high fat foods in addition to the higher sugar foods that people
Mhm.
are consuming. So certainly the high, the big sodas and people consuming large quantities of um, liquid sugar and just refined products definitely contributes to diabetes.
Mhm.
But then also consuming, bacon, eggs, like that actually leads to more insulin resistance over time, and people then can't tolerate carbohydrates, can't metabolize them, versus if you're consuming say um, a diet that's not like a diet that is, for example,
I know we keep moving the mic
sorry.
on you. No, because
Can you hear me now?
yeah, you're
Okay.
hitting very great
Okay.
points. I think
Yeah.
it's because her headphones may be a little too high,
Oh.
Yeah.
so she's starting to think that she is loud. So
Yeah.
Oh.
if you could just turn it down some.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Got it. So I was saying that a diet maybe that contains, for
Mhm.
instance, some whole fruit,
Mhm.
berries, and maybe oatmeal, for example, or a banana, which is like a lot of people think, oh my God, that's like the worst food ever because there's carbohydrates in it.
Not carbohydrates. I know bananas, especially ripe bananas, have a high sugar content. Am I right?
They do. They do.
And
Yep.
whenever I take, like, if I eat a banana at night, I have to drink a lot of water. Otherwise, and I test my, take my diabetes test in the morning, the break and fast test,
Yes.
it's through the
Yeah.
roof because I had a banana. That's what I thought. So go ahead.
It's the combination of things too. So
Mhm.
for example, increasing your fiber intake can be really helpful. But what a lot of people will find over time is that if they cut back, doesn't mean you have to eliminate, but cut back on higher fat foods, they're able to tolerate carbohydrates better, metabolize better, meaning you're not going to, because that your body will be able to adapt to it better, because if, for example, with type 2 diabetes, right, it's not that you and there's different level, like there's different stages of type 2, but if you're just say resistant to insulin, that your body is making insulin is a hormone that we need to it basically, when we consume carbohydrates or sugar, it helps to bring sugar into cells, into storage, which is what we need
for energy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we need that. And with type 2, it's not, or I should say with insulin resistance, not that you don't, that you can't make it. It's just that your body's become resistant to it.
Okay.
Because of yeah.
Wow.
So there's different types of diabetes as well. Just want to.
I thought it was just 1 and 2.
Well, there's actually, I'm not a physician, so I'm not going to get into.
Okay.
But,
that's fair.
And actually, there's some great physicians who will really get into this with you that I would recommend have on the show. But there's actually multiple types of diabetes. Yeah.
Wow.
But type 2 and insulin resistance is the most common and what tends to be a lifestyle disease that is increasing at alarming rates, especially in children and teens. Yeah.
And that's type 2 is, or both are starting to increase within children and teens.
Yes.
Both 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Type 1 is a different type of disease.
Right.
It's not a lifestyle disease.
Right. That's genetics.
It's autoimmune. So there's a number of like genetics interacting with the environment.
Okay.
That's, and that seems to be increasing, but I think autoimmune diseases are in general. So that's one whole issue. But the lifestyle disease, there was actually recently, a few weeks ago, an article in, I think it was USA Today, that was mentioning that type 2 is growing so rapidly that if we continue with these current trends, by 2060, it will have increased 700% from now.
Wow.
Which is really scary. And they were saying, like, this should be a wake-up call for us to provide real intervention, because we do have an opportunity to intervene. But honestly, a medication is not necessarily the answer, especially in these young children.
Right.
It's lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's community, and it really will take a village to sometimes make these changes. But if
Tell me about
our
that
kids
village.
aren't worth it, then I don't know what is, right?
Tell me about the village. What would that village look like, in your opinion, to combat this growing type 2 or diabetes period? What would they, in your opinion?
So we talk a lot about healthcare and health disparities, inequities among
we're
care.
definitely going to get to that.
But this is a huge part of healthcare, but it's not something that can be changed or fixed in a 15-minute physician visit with a patient. So I think there needs to be more at the community level, at all different socioeconomic levels. Okay. People have lost their way in many ways, like Americans don't, like a lot of younger people don't know how to cook. It's not even that they maybe, when I worked in the inner city in the Bronx for over a decade, I met with teenagers who had literally never told me they'd never tried like broccoli, for example, which might sound crazy.
Right.
So just there needs to be cooking classes, better food, more affordable foods available. We also need to stop sometimes we lose the forest through the trees. Like there's such this emphasis that like if people are on social media or on the news, like if you need to get everything organic or it's going to, and honestly, that's not the most important thing for so many people who are eating processed foods or I would much rather see them, I don't care if it's organic or not, be eating whole fruits, vegetables. You can buy frozen vegetables and keep them on hand.
Interesting.
Amazing.
Because I want to,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't want to lose my train of thought here. These days, everything's going out the door. But one of the things that I want to highlight, I want to, if you could just touch on, is frozen foods, like frozen vegetables, frozen meats. Is that good or bad?
So frozen vegetables, like you can buy bags of frozen spinach, frozen broccoli, are actually, frankly, just as healthy as fresh, and they're frozen right at their peak, so they're not necessarily losing the nutrient value. And I think they're great to have because they're not going to go, how many times do people buy fresh vegetables and 2 days later
it's gone.
It's getting slimy, it's going bad.
Right.
So this is a great way that people can incorporate them into a stir fry, with some garlic and some, there's different like seasonings they can add that make it healthy. So when we say, frozen food and canned foods have gotten a bad rap because many of them, if you're buying them sort of completely pre-prepared, they're going to have a lot of extra sodium and maybe fat and chemicals that we don't want. But if you're getting just the frozen vegetable,
like in the packages. Oh, okay.
And it's much less expensive. You can get things year round that might not be in season. So that's something. But I just think that there's a lot of people don't know what to do with them or how to make them taste good.
Right. But when we talk about greens, vegetables, like spinach, but if you consume too much of it, now you increase the chances of kidney stones.
And that's interesting. A lot,
That's what I've been told.
because of oxalates. Yeah, honestly, very few people are consuming spinach to that level.
I did.
You did?
And it was bad.
Because
It was
of
every
spinach?
day.
It was like nearly every day.
Every day he was eating spinach.
I was having the spinach nearly every day. The next
You
thing
should
I was.
be able to eat it every day. Were you drinking a lot of water? Because there's a
No.
lot of different things that can contribute to kidney stones.
Mhm.
I
tell you what contributed to me in the back of that ambulance.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've definitely seen people with kidney stones who were definitely not consuming many greens. But you should be able to eat them certainly in moderation with a ton of water. And there's tons of other vegetables too, that green beans, cauliflower, carrots. So if we get caught up with buying like the I know what you're saying with the farm salmon, we could that whole sort of how either fish was raised or meat with that we can take that argument also into say meat, because there's factory farm versus like organic free range and how animals are treated. But fish in general, and again I hear what you're saying about that, you can buy more expensive fish that's not farmed. But in general, so salmon is high in omega-3 fats, so that it tends to be anti-inflammatory, so that would be something. But even that, you don't, it's going to depend on individual preferences, but limiting that as well can be beneficial. It's certainly beneficial to your wallet as well.
Okay, the fats that you were just talking about, that's not will not trigger diabetes. The fats in salmon.
Not well. There is some saturated fat, but it's definitely higher
very
in
minimal.
omega-3.
Okay.
And I do like to point out, no one food and in one quantity is going to trigger a disease. It's more of it's a long-term habit and looking at dietary patterns as a whole. And that's why I say, people, if you love meat, you don't need to eliminate it. It just means minimize the amount you're consuming. I don't know if you've ever heard of or familiar with the blue zones.
No, please.
But
Enlighten
the blue
me.
zones are it was actually National Geographic, someone from National Geographic. There's now books out and cookbooks.
I thought this was an Avatar thing she's getting ready to tell us.
No,
Right.
it's identified regions of the world where people have lived the longest, like longest lived people with low levels of chronic disease. One of them is Okinawa, Japan. Another one is Sardinia. And there's a number of others that I'm not remembering what they are now. But one of the common things.
But they're all in the Pacific.
Yes, but they looked at diet, lifestyle. So one of the things, there was a number of things that were in common. One was of course, they're not eating processed food, right? Because it's not even available. They're having whole food, mostly plants, but they're not vegan or vegetarian. They're consuming small amounts of meat, fish. So that was what commonality among them. They also get regular activity, so walking, that's so important, being physically active, not necessarily, pounding the joints at the gym constantly, but just being active is really important. And also community and really value for older people, which I think is important, but that community aspect and people eating meals together and those were a lot of the things that they had found. But my point is that it's not about necessarily, it was the diet patterns that seemed to be most important.
Right.
Yep.
Back to riding diabetes a little bit further. You ever heard of digestive diabetes in kids?
Digestive diabetes.
Yeah, someone had mentioned this to me a while back. But anyway, childhood diabetes. When a child is 3-4 years old and it's run around with, as you explained earlier, maybe a little older, but they already have type 2 diabetes. Is that the environment, the family's environment, or is that a result of that, or is that something that came through genetics?
For type 2?
Yeah.
So
or any of those things. But, I guess I'm concerned about a young person, a child, having diabetes, because left untouched, we all know what ends up. I mean,
absolutely.
All the way to amputations to death.
Correct. Yeah. So it's not when you talk about type 2, like if you have a typically type 2 diabetes in childhood or teenagers is usually accompanied by obesity, insulin resistance, trifecta of other medical issues. A lot of it driven by lifestyle. There may be a genetic susceptibility, but it's definitely not all genetics because if we look a couple generations ago, genes don't change that fast. This is a problem that has rapidly evolved over the last few generations, last maybe 40 years. Exactly. Yeah. So you can't blame that fully on genetics. And the truth is, other cultures, people come from other countries with their healthy habits, and within a generation or so, their kids have adopted all the same sort of Western diseases that a lot we'd have if they take on sort of the American diet and lifestyle. So it's really, there was actually a 60 Minutes episode recently, and they were talking about, and I really appreciated the doctor on there was saying that this was a genetic thing, and I really appreciate not blaming the patient because we never should, and there's definitely some genetic component, but we can't ignore the effects of the environment, which is so dramatically different. If this were genetic, we would not see a change in 40 years. Like, there's not a big genetic difference.
But here's a question. Is there really a big change in it in 40 years, or is it just that we have more access to information?
No, there's been a big change.
Oh, okay.
And obesity, and a lot of it.
I know in obesity, you're absolutely right.
And that's what's
all in the last 40 years.
But we also have, when we think back to 40 years ago or longer, we didn't have access to fast food the way we do it now. So right,
I remember when I was a kid, fast food was a treat.
Right, it's not now.
No, that's survival. Go ahead.
It's the mainstay of many people survive on that now.
Which brings to the next point. We talk about fresh foods, fresh meat, fresh meats, fresh vegetables, all types of. But you did say frozen is just as good. And I really and truly want to highlight that because disenfranchised communities that have food deserts. Yeah. Total food deserts. You can't get to food unless you go to. Am I good about? Okay. Unless you go to, like the likes of a Ferraro's, you have to go outside of your area in order to get. And a lot of people don't even have automobiles or transportation, period, to get these type of foods. And seeing that there's no foods being sold in their area, in their community. Right. In the community, that has its own challenges. So you're saying that, am I getting this right when I say that to compensate for that, we can focus on frozen foods
You can frozen, and I myself always have my freezer stocked with frozen vegetables, frozen fruit too. You can even let those.
Are you a vegetarian?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you a vegetarian?
Yes.
By the way, you got to see this woman exercise. Oh my God, people. Really? She's a killer.
You're too nice.
No, I watch you on the treadmill. I just say, okay, I'm leaving the gym now. You make me feel so guilty. Okay, all right, I got to leave. I'm not going to be up to that speed, and I'm not doing it. It's no good.
Thank my favorite Peloton instructor for the runs. Bex Gentry is my
is that right?
She's not easy.
Okay, then I'm going to do a quick shift. I'll do a quick shift, and then I'm going to get back to a topic at hand. But I watch the way you work out. It's like you do sprints, sprints, stop.
It depends on the class I'm following.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Those are classes you're following.
Because I might be doing an intervals class.
Okay. And those are the ones that sprint, stop, and stop. Yeah. Okay. But those are the ones I guess I usually see. Only ones I ever saw you on.
Sometimes do endurance ones that's like slower. But we've done beach body workouts together in the gym.
I tried.
Yeah.
I tried.
So, yeah.
I'm looking for a beach body for this summer. Anyway, speaking of diet and losing weight, talk to me about that.
So that's something that as a nutritionist who worked in the Bronx for a long time at a large academic place. And I worked with a lot of adults, but also teens, children with obesity, and who were in the early stages of lifestyle diseases caused by by in large part their obesity, like high blood pressure, high lipids, like high cholesterol, maybe insulin resistance. And, I worked in a clinic, and counseling somebody for 15, 20 minutes and giving handouts, which is kind of what we were equipped to do at the time, just wasn't effective. It wasn't what they needed, because I can tell them that all I want, but they're going to go back into their environment, into their food environment, where they don't necessarily know how to cook it. They don't have a lot of time. They maybe don't have a safe place to exercise. And it's just really hard to implement those things. And then they come back kind of frustrated. So what I would like to talk about is the program that I developed with one of the cardiologists.
Go right ahead.
Rob
Open mic.
Osfeld at Montefiore in the Bronx, which we had started this back in 2012. We called it the Cardiac Wellness Program. We have stopped doing it really because of COVID put a stop to it, but we're going to try to restart it. But he and I got together because it was the same frustrations, like seeing he was on the adult side, seeing patients come in, heart attacks, severe diabetes, strokes, and seeing just patients get, a little bit better with medications, but not fully better. They were still getting readmitted, still possibly having a lot of complications. And there was just a lot more research coming out about the just massive impact of lifestyle and health to really treat, and in many cases actually put chronic diseases into remission, like type 2 diabetes.
Oh, okay.
So we started this wellness program, and we would do it on Saturdays. We actually offered it free of charge. I think even offering it with a small fee would have been fine, but he really wanted to make sure that everyone in the community had access. And this is with a largely lower income population. And we actually served a whole plant-centered meal. We both gave presentations. I had actual food demos to show people, and they got to eat it and taste that, wow, this food actually really tastes good. And a lot of it was not complicated. It was simple, and
based on those spices.
We would have a patient who had success get up and speak and talk about the benefits they'd experienced. So we kind of created a little community of people. And it's really unusual that a program like this exists, in large part because we can't get reimbursed for it. But I think
was this the only program that you know of in the country? Or?
Well, there are other programs, certainly, but a lot of them charge a lot of money. So it kind of
right, which is always a problem with. This is why most of my people, and I speak for my people of color, who have a challenge with eating healthy, is because of the cost factor. Now, you did highlight earlier the cost factor can be decreased based on, and I'm focused on this frozen food thing that you're talking about, because not everyone can afford to go down to the market downstairs there from us and just run. I know people who I actually said the prices in there is part of the security, but not everyone can afford to go and get fresh foods in certain spaces and such. So the fact that you highlighted that frozen foods are good and it's something that you can that you should use. Well, let me ask: should it be an alternative, or should it be or is this something that you would drive people towards?
That I would drive people towards
frozen foods.
I will. I think even if you can afford it, because a lot of times, even for me, I'll buy something and then maybe I won't be home, or I'll be out with a friend, and before you know it goes bad. If I have frozen food, I always know I can have a vegetable at night, and I'm gonna be able to make it fresh. And people make in the winter soups or stews. It's great to add into those things. So I think it's a great thing to for everybody to have on hand, for sure.
Okay, I always hear, don't eat after a certain time of night. Is that factual, or is it just something that's been thrown around since the diet craze?
Yeah, there's so many rules, and there's no hard and fast rule that works for everyone. I think, honestly, there's nothing magical about the time that you're eating for weight loss. It's more important how much you're eating throughout the day. Now, that being said, for better sleep and digestion. It's not great to eat a huge meal and go right to bed. But I think
But that's when you feel sleepy.
right. But I think,
as we call it in the hood, the itis.
oh,
Go ahead.
I think part of it was that when people overeat, people tend to be good at breakfast and lunch because they're working, they're busy running around. And at night is when they have time to unwind. They're on the couch. And that's when it's easy to overdo it with snacks and treats and cookies and chips. So for some people,
what's wrong with chips?
nothing in you know what I mean? And you can, first of all, you can buy health quality chips, but you're sitting down and eating.
She's blowing my grocery
eating the
list.
whole bag.
You know, hey, what's wrong with a whole bag? The family size. No, I'm teasing. Go ahead.
So it's easier to kind of not get, for most people, if they have sort of a hard stop where they're not going to eat past a certain time, it prevents the mindless eating. So I think that's where it comes from. So for some people, if they're able to stick to that and that's working for them, that's great. But if you get home late one night and you haven't had dinner, again, there's nothing magical about, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have a late dinner. I mean, in Spain, people eat, it's just normal to have dinner at 11 o'clock. They're not obese or don't have weight issues. So part of it's kind of like, you know, what works for you and your day-to-day routine.
We talk about frozen foods. You highlighted how it's good for you. You should make it part of your process. What about canned foods?
I think some canned foods, I usually recommend the lower sodium or reduced sodium, but I have like canned chickpeas and
I love those.
beans. Yeah, so it's.
You ever had my chicken nachos?
I don't eat chicken, so I probably haven't.
Oh, okay, no. Nikki and I believe Larissa had it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, she's in the building.
Yes.
Go ahead. I have the 360 ladies up here. Go ahead.
Yes.
So chickpeas, you said. What about what's that? Red beans and But those are, I know, high in fiber, which is good. But however, are those foods that make you bloat?
They can, especially if you increase your fiber too quickly and you're not used to it. So first of all, you want to be consuming adequate fluid, be well hydrated, because that helps things move.
Break that down for me as soon as you finish. I need you to break down that adequate fluids, because I done heard it all over. A gallon a day, 3 bottles, 5 bottles. I done heard so much. But first, I want you to finish with your.
So I would say increase slowly your people's fiber intake, but that can be really, that it's funny because we talk about in this country, we have such an excess of nutrients, but fiber, like we have an excess of sugar intake and processed food and animal products, but fiber is the one thing where actually Americans are extremely deficient in. I don't have the exact statistics, but I know the recommendation is that most of us are getting like 35 grams a day. We're getting like a third of that if we're lucky. So, first of all, fiber is found naturally, of course, in whole fruits, vegetables, beans, also in things like chia seeds, flax seeds, oatmeal, all these different things, and increasing.
I have a bowl of oatmeal every morning.
That's great, because also maximizing your fiber intake has so many benefits, from digestive benefits to increasing, like helping to repopulate our gut microbiome. That's the good gut bugs in our GI tract, in our gut, which is so important for immunity and health. Also, it helps actually lower cholesterol by binding to cholesterol, certain types of fiber, like soluble fiber, and squirting it out of the body. So it actually helps, it really is very beneficial, and something we should all, and that's part of what the benefit is of eating more plants, is you're getting a lot more fiber.
I have a vicious stew. I got to introduce you guys to it. I make a stew. It's a killer. But I do it with both. Both canned vegetables, peas, beans, or I either buy like the Goya bag, the dry beans. And you have to soak those overnight for like 8 hours. But I look at those things after and I see how they go from these little things in the bag.
Yeah.
And when you soak them for 8 hours, they just blow up. And I'm thinking, I'm often questioning, but it hasn't made me stop, by the way. I'm often questioning, am I putting this same bloating system into my body because that's exactly what happened. It's loaded with it got obviously it soaked in the water and made it expand. The dry
Yeah.
peas. Is that healthy?
Oh yeah, that's because you're not going to eat them raw, right? Like
Right.
that would actually be. There's all kinds of like inhibitor enzymes
Right.
on them that so it is, and same thing with like rice or quinoa. You know, it expands.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is. Lentils is another great one,
Right.
by the way.
I love lentils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can, there's so many amazing plant-focused recipes. People make like a lentil loaf instead of maybe, a meatloaf one day. And it can actually
Lentil
be
loaf?
delicious. Oh, yes. Instead of meat. Think
How
of
do
the
you
money
even do
you'd
this?
save and the
How do you-
health benefits
But you
you
gotta
have.
grind it down. How do you do this?
Oh, they mix it with different herbs and then you bake it.
Do you
in a
do
loaf
this?
pan. I have, but not in a long time. But I do eat a ton of lentils on Saturday. I've been just so busy. But if people, there's so many amazing
I'm holding her to this lentil loaf
Definitely.
on the 2-5.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're having a lentil loaf party on the 2-5.
Yes.
By the way, we had our New Year's Eve gathering at my spot, and Larissa came in. Oh my God! Blame her for anything, any weight. Oh my God! She was loaded. The food was so much food,
Did
and
she
then
supply the food?
she actually came upstairs and decided that she was going to prepare platters.
Oh wow!
She had
Not
platters
surprised.
laid out on my dining room table.
Look
I mean,
great.
platters. They look great. There's so much. We had a good bit of people over there. We had fun. By the way, you joined us via Skype or whatever. Was it FaceTime for a second or so just to say Happy New Year because she had to be in New York. No, but we should have one of these cook-offs where we have healthy eating something.
We
Yeah.
really should and share that because that's I think part of people need to see that healthy eating can taste amazing,
Mhm.
Right.
can be affordable, you don't have to spend hours and hours preparing,
Mhm.
and that's part of it. And have like I said, a community or an accountability buddy
Mhm.
for some of this stuff.
Accountability buddy. Now,
Yes.
what is that? Somebody said, "Don't eat that."
Well, I always say not quite like that, but one of the things that I think over time I've learned is so important is it's always easier to make a change if your family is on board with you and supportive.
Mhm.
If you have an unsupportive family, it can be a lot more challenging, especially if you don't have a lot of resources. So I would encourage people to, if you don't live with people who are supportive, try to find a friend who is, where you can communicate every day, kind of hype each other up, maybe even meet them for a walk, for a workout.
Mhm.
If you don't have that, look online. There are so many amazing online communities where people are looking to, have healthy living and that kind of thing.
That's how you get these
Yeah.
mass murderers. I'm kidding. No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. What type of diet would you recommend for a teenage athlete?
Teenage athlete. Well,
Because the reason why I want to highlight this, a teenage athlete with diabetes. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because young people tend to look for something to make them, athletes in particular, to give them energy, to make them go. And then they consume sodas and all that type of stuff. Is there some other foods or drinks that they can have that's more natural that they should be, not have, that they should be consuming?
right. So, are you thinking of an athlete with type 2 diabetes?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's actually a good point because exercise is so great for our bodies, but it might be, you might think that why would an athlete have type 2? Sometimes, especially depending on the sport, exercise, there are people who are active who are still struggling with obesity. So
Right.
that's important to note. But if I were working with that person individually, I always take somewhat of an individual approach, including their preferences. But anyone who's an athlete who, depending on how much they're working out, the main drink they're going to need to consume is water. They, depending on how much they are sweating, again, that's going to depend on the sport, the time of year. They might need added extra electrolyte. There's different drinks that might have some extra electrolytes without added sugar. Definitely, I would not want an athlete consuming like tons of soda or juice, just straight juices. That's not not quality. But overall, be recommending a diet that is, again, plant focused, high in plants. They may need certainly more protein as well. For an athlete. If you're active, you do need more protein, and more calories if you're working out a lot. Right. So they're going to need more of that, but still low in refined sugar.
Like you said, people will think that some athletes, because you're active, you're participating in sports, you don't have a weight problem. But I give you Charles Barkley. For as long as the former NBA basketball player, for as long as he said he always had a weight issue, and he's very active. He was dominating defensive player in the NBA, but dominant forward, totally. Yeah. You couldn't stop him. But however, when you look at individuals like that, who's active, what causes them to have weight issues and they're that active? Well, because if as a parent, you look at your teenage kid and they're involved in sports, but they still have a weight issue.
Right.
What is that? And you watching your kid move. I mean, move around. What causes that?
So, very good question. I think a lot of times we
Oh, that was the only good one I had? No, go ahead.
Overestimate the amount of calories we burn doing certain activities. So, the food environment is such for many people where they may be consuming a lot more than they're actually burning.
Oh, okay.
And highly processed foods that are high in sugar, actually, studies have found that they can be pretty addictive. So that's another thing that can be hard too. And they're meant, I mean, the food manufacturers, obviously they want you to keep buying their products. And so
right.
They may be consuming just more than they're burning. And part of it's the environment and maybe some genetics, but that's why. And that's why sometimes when people, I mean, it's really not only in athletes, but it's not uncommon for doctors and registered dietitians to have people come in looking to lose weight and saying, I'm in the gym 5-6 days a week and I can't lose any weight. Well, it's the food. So diet is 80% of it, 80 to 90% of it when it comes to weight loss, usually. Yep.
One of the biggest tricks out here, like you mentioned the corporations of foods, they say no fat or reduced fats and all that type of stuff, which a parent who just heard what we're talking about here tonight, say something about fats are no good. It triggers diabetes, the fatty content in food. And then they start looking at the packaging and say, low fat, or no fat. And they start feeding their kids that. But for taste, these corporations start piling in sugars.
Yeah, because it's all processed, right?
Right.
So if you're eating a real food, like the other thing too, and I, having worked with children, is it really changes your taste buds when you're having all of this highly processed fake sugar to the point where
fake sugar, whoa.
Well, fake foods, I should say, like with so much sugar, like cereals and adding sugar to it to the point where fruit is sweet, right? But if they taste like an orange or a berry, they're like, it's not sweet to them because it's like, it almost tastes bitter because they were so used to this heightened sense. And so they need to almost retrain their palate. So a lot of times it's hard, but we have people stop consuming sugar or sugary beverages for like a month. And that it can be hard, but that can really reset their taste buds to the point where now they're actually appreciating the flavors of real foods again.
I'm glad you said that because there was a time where I wouldn't drink any water. I'll have like an Arizona can. And, water to me wasn't like, it just wasn't clicking. Sure. But more and more, I'm breaking down the habit because I realized Arizona can is not good for you. I just started, I can drink more water than I can drink a soda. Like it hurts to drink a soda. It's just not a good taste. It's not good for my palate.
I don't consume sodas that much. The only soda that I really drink is ginger ale. Um, someone came to my home a few times at different events on the 2-5 and have loaded up with Pepsis, Sprites. I'm not going to say in any names, Larissa, but she's in the room. No, but but here's one. I'm a gigantic, I would say large, huge, no, gigantic consumer of honey, natural honey. As a matter of fact, I go to the health food store here on Whaley Avenue, Edge of the Woods. Big ups to them. I just give them a free plug. I go there and I buy the jars of honey, which, by the way, Larissa came to the house and saw the empty jars and thought I was doing moonshine. That's another story. Unbeliever. She accused me of doing moonshine in the house. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Yo.
You know, but anyway. Honey. I go over there and I get large jars of it. Now, since I've been consuming this, I just started to get allergies and it just went away.
Oh.
And that is because I was told that the local honey, because of how the bees pollinate, to get the pollen from the flowers, and then regurgitate it to make honey. That's generally what honey is. Bees vomit if you want to be happy about it. But and because it's natural and it's from the area, the pollen in the air is regurgitated and your immune system works. Have you heard of anything?
That's really interesting. I'm not familiar with that. I do read a lot on allergies, but that's really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
And because maybe it's psychological.
There are a lot of benefits to honey.
Yeah, because I put it in my oatmeal, I put it in my coffee, I put it. Oh no, I'm honey on everything.
Yep.
Every little. Oh, I had a little sore throat. I put until it got too carried away where I couldn't talk one morning, and then that was another. Oh, by the way, thank you again for the care package that she knocked on the door. Ding dong, ding dong. Yes, a care package. Best neighbor ever. I'm telling you, she's the best neighbor in the building. Everybody knows her, by the way. Everyone knows Larissa. I mean, I met you through Larissa.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
Exactly.
So it's only fitting that she's
Is she? People call me the mayor of the building. No, they should call her the governor.
Yeah. No, seriously. Oh my God.
What you say?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm repeating it.
Okay. But I'm speaking with Lauren Graff. She's is a clinical dietitian? Is that a clear?
Yeah, registered dietitian.
Registered
Yep.
Okay, registered dietitian. She's given us a lot of information here on diets, things that we should and shouldn't eat, things that we should consume in moderation. But that's easier said than done, by the way. Moderation. As you stated earlier, how good things taste.
Uh-huh.
How do you find yourself being able to moderate something? Like, I have a sweet tooth. I don't think it's really good for. I know some of the stuff I'm consuming is like, oh, what are you doing? And then go through that guilt moment, but it's not going to stop me because the corporate addiction is already kicked in, It's like I need my corporate high, They're feeding me these sugars.
Sure.
What do you do, like, when you have these cravings?
Well, so every once in a while, it's fine to let go and just.
But what happens if you let go and you binge?
But you certainly don't want to be doing that on a regular basis. So one of the things I recommend is if you have something where you're going to easily overindulge and not be able to control it, don't keep large quantities of that in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're going to eat half a bag of Oreo cookies, maybe don't purchase that. Also, like
even if you just once in a
well, you can get sometimes what you can do is get smaller individual bags. That way,
what is wrong with you? That's a teaser.
I'm not talking about the 100-calorie. I'm not talking about that. The other thing too.
But those are teasers. If I get a small pack of Oreos, it's like, why?
Well, what about doing like a healthier hot chocolate with a little? Oh no, these are things that you sip slowly. It depends what you crave. So there are some things like I'm just giving some, like, for example, I'll have like a small chocolate protein bar or some squares of dark chocolate that's low sugar, high antioxidants. Mm-hmm. You can eat that regularly. It's filling.
But if you do, isn't there a side effect to that, a negative for eating too much dark chocolate?
Yes, too much of it, yeah, but typically you're not going to have. I mean, if you buy some small squares of it, plus it's not super high in sugar where it's going to like spike your sugar up,
Mm.
the way like a cookie might,
Mhm.
because it's a little bit more bitter. Again, this is some people crave the sugar.
Mhm.
I keep things like these. For example, this is like a chocolate mint protein bar. There's a little sugar, but it's mostly plant protein. It satisfies the craving for me. It almost tastes like a Thin Mint. And when I'm on the go, I
Mm.
do that rather than having a whole box of actual Thin Mints.
Oh, okay.
So that's just an example.
So you wouldn't
yeah.
recommend, like, if you have the sweet tooth, you wouldn't get a whole box and then take out some and put them in little Ziploc bags. You wouldn't
If you
recommend
think
that?
you can control it, you
Mm.
could.
So it's
do
about
that.
self-control.
Right.
If you're gonna go that route, yes.
Okay.
Mm.
I also, for people who know that they can't have control, I would prefer like a more volume eating approach, like making a chocolate shake with maybe a delicious chocolate protein powder, and you can
Mm.
throw in some other things. Like that can be really satisfying, add the flavor, but it's more filling if you know that you're not gonna be able to stick to 2 cookies.
I don't know if this
You
will be
know?
the best word. Again, going with my limits terms. So you're retraining your palate. You're
Mhm.
pretty much. I don't want to use the word trick. I don't like that.
But that's what you're doing.
Pretty much, but I'd rather say retrain because it's like you're getting the
trying to go
same.
live the lie over here.
It's all about living. Let me stop. Fake it till you make it. Nah.
No.
No, we don't. We don't go like that. But you're pretty much telling your palate like, look, this tastes the same, but it's healthier. Like that's
My
just the whole
son's a
motion.
nutbag, isn't he?
Yes, I am.
I'm telling you, this kid, man. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna do with this kid.
I like this.
I'm over here like trying to do my best to insult myself and say, we gotta go through some trick
No.
and sorcery. He's
No.
over here trying to take it away from me. She's helping me.
I know.
But
I'm telling you, you know what's gonna happen?
What's up?
One day you're gonna come knock on the door and I'm your father still laid out stiff on
Don't
the
blame me.
I'm
Don't
gonna
blame me.
you.
No,
you
because
can't
she
even
just gave you the guideline of self-control.
Oh my God.
You're training.
I was just right there.
No, you weren't.
I spent 55 minutes getting to this point, and
No,
you
you
snatched it away in like
you weren't.
20 seconds.
No, you weren't. You
Oh
already
my
had it in your
God.
head. I've been tricked. That's what you told yourself.
Ah. Yeah, he's
You
right.
told yourself that. You just letting somebody else in the room so you can blame. No.
Oh my goodness! I thank you so much. I have Lauren Graff came in here. She's in here, not came in. She's in here with us. The guest. She is a nutritionist, a dietitian. Let me correct myself. And nutritionist. Well, what she say? Those are like a gym instructor without any license.
I like that.
She has certifications on what she's speaking on.
So if I
Hold on one second.
sorry
I
about that.
want to touch on people of color
Mm.
and diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And I highlighted the areas of us having food deserts. I highlighted the areas of us eating frozen foods as a way to combat the food deserts. We highlighted honey. We highlighted a lot of stuff. Is there something that's very important to remember to balance your diet? What if there's that one thing that you would say? What is there to help you balance? Because I was just going through my cravings for Oreos and all that. Is there one thing that you can say? Try this.
The one thing I would say to balance is try to make sure you are incorporating vegetables into at least 2 meals a day. So lunch and dinner,
Okay. Okay.
even vegetables and fruit into at least 2 meals a day, and
Okay.
at least you're going to be getting some quality food in.
I needed that.
Yeah.
No, I really did. I needed that because we can all sit here and we can talk about eating food, eating healthy, blah 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 blah. People want to know what's that one thing that I could try
Yeah.
every day that I can do. So all of this wraps around people to helping you eat well, live well, and have a long and healthy lifestyle.
And we need a lot more programs in our community.
You sound like you wanted to touch base on that.
I do, yeah, because I really think that there needs to be more funding away from. I just want to talk a little bit about access to dietitians and nutritionists. And the way our system works now is that once you are acutely ill and you're in the hospital, you can see one. briefly for free. But then for many people, once they're out, if they don't there's really nowhere to go for help in terms of nutrition classes, affordable nutrition counseling, or group sessions unless you pay privately. And it really shouldn't be that way. I think that we need to be having more community-based approach and programs and activities, exercise, cooking, teaching, to bring people together.
Community.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work on the community.
Mm-hmm.
Work on building the community of healthy living. Agree with that? Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Is there any way that you want people to get in contact with you? Is there something you want to put out there, or just look at this and just run with it?
You can look. I'm on Instagram,
Okay.
which is just my name, Lauren C. Graff.
Okay, that's Lauren, Laurenc, Graff, Graff.
One F.
Oh, Graff. My bad.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's probably the best way. Yeah.
The best way. So you can check her out. You can see some of the stuff. Do you put on there some of the meals that you cook on your Instagram?
I do. I've done a little bit. I need to be more active on there, which I plan to be. But yes, I do have some. And yeah, we're hopefully going to be restarting our wellness program in New York. But I hope that we can bring something.
I like you bringing here to New Haven.
Yes.
Why don't we do that?
Exactly.
Once again, I thank you so much, Lauren Graff, for coming in and hanging out with us. Keeping it ugly with me, Joe Ugly. And of course, my son, the young prince. It's like, where did he go with that?
Yo.
I don't know. Why not? Call him the young prince.
Random.
Random. Totally random.
Go.
All right, people. We'll see you guys next week. Stay connected.
All right.
And check it out. Go tell a friend where you got all this information from. As we keep it ugly here on To The Stream.